Hello, everyone, and welcome to Module 2 of Entheogenesis, True Healing with Master Teacher Plants, Divine Sacraments, and Psychedelic Medicines. I am super stoked to be here with you today because what we're covering in this module is so important, and I feel so passionate about it. It's such a deep part of every single ceremony and my day-to-day life. So today, I would like to begin with a prayer, and then we'll dive into the information. Now, every module, I am offering a different opening prayer because ceremony is cross-cultural, and ceremony always comes from a deep place of heart connection. Well, healing ceremony, there's other types of ceremonies too, but the ceremonial work that we are all about, that this course is in dedication to, is the ceremony that is inspired from our direct connection in our hearts to all that is. And there are countless ways to honor that great spirit, that great love, that great life that we are inextricably connected and woven within to the great web of life. And so I will offer a prayer that's the opening prayer for the Pachacuti Mesa lineage. And this is a prayer that's spoke in Quechua. And I do ask for forgiveness for my Quechua pronunciation because I am not a native speaker. And there's many nuances that I miss, but I do speak from my heart. And that seems to call forth the spirits. So here we go. I invite you to take a few deep breaths. And with each breath, drawing yourself into the here and now, allowing any other stimulation, outside energy, any distractions to fade away as we enter this sacred time space of this non-local, ceremonial, transformational container of love and empowerment. Iya, tekse muyu, te tanchi zuera kocha, pachakamak, hampi kamayok, ahayo pachamama, ahayo mamakia, ahayo werakocha, ahayo inti, ahayo kuichi, nyokani chinchai suyu altomi sayok, nyokani inti kia chori, nyokani munai sonko, nyokani saiwa kuyai, nyokani hampi kameyok, hampui, hampui, hampui. So in that prayer, we're honoring the great originating mystery, that shining, great originating mystery of the universe, creator, creatrix of all that is, and the creator of this world. We're honoring the Hampi Kamayok, which is the container of brilliant medicine. In that, I'm claiming that I am a practitioner of these arts, that I am a channel of love and caring, that I'm a clear pillar of light, that I'm a child of the sun and the moon, our lunar and solar natures, and that I call myself to myself. I call all those aspects of myself into the here and now for this sacred ceremony. Beautiful. Okay, so here we are in module 2, and we're going to be covering more of the essential components of sacred space. These are the aspects that are non-negotiable. In order for there to be true healing and awakening, these aspects have to be present. If one's missing, in my experience and Darcy's experience, which is extensive and yet by no means as extensive as our elders, absolutely necessary. And we learn these ways from these beautiful wisdom keepers with decades and decades more experience than us. And I'm so honored that we can now share this with you in this way where we're embracing the technology and the capacity to connect in this quantum way. And I pray that I am a clear channel, that my body, mind, heart, spirit, and soul are in one integral, coherent alignment, so I may offer this teaching to you. Awesome. So today we are covering entheogens, the universal non-interference clause, the power of consent, and spiritual sovereignty as body autonomy. Last week, or in the last module, we covered the role of the practitioner and where true healing comes from, which is the inner healer. And as I shared, there's specific conditions that are required for that inner healer to be uncovered, discovered, to be remembered, to be reconciled, to be reclaimed. And last week I talked about the vibration, the space, the love, compassion, kindness, unconditional positive regard that we need in order to have the courage and go into these very expanded states of consciousness for healing and come back out the other side in a more integrated, more whole, more deeply resourced, and I would even add in having a more resilient nervous system than when we began. And Darcy and I's whole goal, like we have a couple of big time goals when we're working with people, not many, but they're really important to us. And one of our main goals as practitioners is to have people leave more integrated than when they came. And so there's a lot of psychedelic integration coaching sessions and coaching programs, which is awesome. And that's a really helpful skill to have. However, wouldn't it be wonderful if people who are practicing with these medicines and these psychedelics make it their goal to have people come and leave in a better, more integrated, more grounded, more empowered way? And so this is what we've dedicated our practice to. Is how do we do this? And every ceremony with every person who joins us, we learn a bit more. We learn more nuance, more sensitivity, and we've had to pivot over the years. It's not the same exact ceremony as what we received from our elders. We've needed to adapt and change for this goal, for this intention, that people leave more integrated than they came. Because we all have really big lives. We really need to come to sanctuary spaces, to come to sacred ceremonial spaces, to do that deep work of spiritual maturing, healing, and awakening so that we can step into our lives and be kinder, to be more generous, to be better mothers and fathers, husbands, wives, partners, to be able to meet our relations, our friends, our work colleagues with greater sensitivity and compassion, with more understanding, so that we can stop the endless self-improvement project and learn how to self-care and self-love. These are the merits of the ceremony. It's not what happens in the ceremony. It's how we bring it into our lives afterward. So that does take community, counseling, coaching. It's fantastic. But the goal is that they leave more integrated than when they came. Our second goal is to have everybody who works with us leave with greater self-trust. So a hallmark of cults, and we know because cult-like behavior is rampant in the medicine world and the yoga world and the Buddhist world And the scientific materialist world, cult-like behavior is rampant. And the hallmark of a cult is that people leave with less self-trust. And also that there is a golden one, the guru, the guide, the shaman, the doctor, the expert is here. They have more awareness, more spiritual power, more spiritual connection, more capacity than the other people can have. And so there's an inherent power differential. And so if somebody comes and works with us and they leave with more self-trust, then we've sidestepped a whole mess of power dynamics. And so to meet these two goals, both for our own peace of mind, but also our own journeys, where I have unintentionally given away so much of my personal power. I've unintentionally seen others as more than me. And in that looking up and in that power dynamic of diminishing myself because of my intense self-deprecation patterns in the past, my overwhelming inferior ego structure, that I've really harmed myself. And I've put myself in situations where I was open to harm. And then all the things that come from that, feeling the victim, feeling resentment, feeling judgment. There's so much that comes that is just not helpful from that place of seeing the teacher, the shaman, the expert as above and outside. And when we leave with greater self-trust from any circle, then we can meet the challenges of our day-to-day in an entirely new way. Okay, so that is the starting point for where I want to bring us today, which is the intention for this sacred circle is the same. That you leave this Entheogenesis world, this course, this journey today and after every module and the entire completion of this journey with greater self-trust, greater discernment, and that you have the practical tools to meet your ceremonial work, your psychedelic work, and yes, even the day-to-day business of life from a more integral and holistic way. It's not easy right now for any of us to navigate how rapid the change on a collective level is happening. We're all pivoting, we're all learning, and we're all being really forced in a way of there's incredible pressure to evolve and to transform, or to experience ever greater breakdown and entropy. And we're living in the time that the ancients have known as a great turning, and this has been prophesized from so many different traditions. In the Andean cosmovision, this is known as a Pachacuti. Pacha is translated as time, space, reality, dimension, world. All those meanings in Pacha, and also often related to the earth. And then Kuti is transformation or the turning over. And so we are in a global Pachacuti. And, some of our elders like Don Oscar and Cindy Maracasada, they shared with us a couple of years ago, they're like, we didn't know if we would actually live for the Pachacuti, if we'd be alive. We weren't sure if it was going to happen after us. We weren't sure if we just were building our lives in preparation for the next generation's work, which of course we all are. But then in March of 2020, and the global COVID lockdown began, they knew, and so many other elders that we have known and have voiced that now we're truly in the global Pachacuti. And part of this transformation is everything becoming its opposite. It's incredible pressure from all different sides, economic, social. Things are transforming from one extreme to the next, and then it back again. All that we've kind of taken to be the way things are, and our story of being human is rapidly dissolving and transforming. And this is bringing about a psychic pressure and a level of cognitive dissonance that we have never seen on this level. We've never seen it like this. And this pressure and cognitive dissonance is also bringing about an impulse, a very natural, a deeply organic impulse within many of us to seek, as our ancestors sought, expanded states of consciousness, so that we can find new and adaptive solutions to the challenges that we face. And that actually they're so global and it's so big, and in our own personal lives, even our little challenges can feel so global, that we really need to change our state of consciousness in order to get enough space that we can begin to look at our lives, look at our patterns, look at how we have created our current state of being. And so the great turning is leading to the third wave of the psychedelic renaissance. And within this third wave, there's so much pressure, there's so much intensity, there's so much change and volatility and uncertainty that people are moving quickly towards the psychedelics. And then once they experience the psychedelics and the plant medicines, often having such powerful experiences that then they move towards more and more and more. And some of the big challenges and risks that we see right now, we weren't seeing 5 or 10 years ago. We're seeing a level of challenge in our own, by community members who are coming to us for help, a level of challenge from some of the ceremonial work and psychedelic therapy work that has actually created like a complex trauma that takes even more work to get through. So the risks at this time, the gifts, are so wild and challenging. But most of the risks, most of the intense challenges are coming from people who are jumping into these experiences with little to no preparation, little to no vetting of the practitioners, little to no research on the plant medicines, counterindications, and then also the inherent risks and dangers of certain psychedelics, let alone the wild states of consciousness that we enter with the world's most powerful psychoactive substances. And so this course is really something that we have been called to create and develop because we feel a moral obligation to do so. We feel a responsibility because we do have this experience. And this has been our Darcy and I's calling, our soul passion for whatever strange and weird reason. My dharma is to really rapidly expand my consciousness and to support others to do that, to move into miraculous and spontaneous healing and deep soul reclamation. But it's weird and it's pretty far out there. And the last thing I ever thought was that it would be a path of right livelihood, let alone that I would feel a moral obligation and responsibility to find ways and avenues like this course to share this information and learning. But things are weird. And as Hunter S. Thompson has shared, when the going gets weird, the weird go pro. So that's kind of what Darcy and I are doing with this. And I pray that this information helps you to embrace all the gifts that are waiting for you, all the gifts that live within you, dormant like seeds within the soil, waiting for the sunlight, the water, and the rich nourishment of your conscious awareness to activate. And that's one of the things that the sacred plant medicines can really help with if we're in the sacred space conditions that's required for the inner healer to awaken. So with this, we see that very specific language is needed to begin to define what actually we're even talking about. And because of that, with module 2, there is a written component for this week, this module, which is a document where I've written out some core definitions. Now, I am a big fan. I'm just like very passionate about specificity with language because our language is so powerful. How we say something and the words we use really matter. And this has become even more affirmed for me because when we're working with people, myself, when I'm working with others, in expanded states of consciousness with psychoactive molecules, the entheogens, we are in a highly suggestible state. And so the tone and the language used really matters to establish the conditions where true healing is possible. And so as I break down some of these core terms, as I define each one, you'll understand a bit of how we operate within our sacred space, within the field that we tend, so that we're always in honor. Like the most important thing is that the inner healer within each person is absolutely held as sacred, and that how we move and what we say is conscious, so it doesn't trespass that sanctity, that sovereignty of each individual's whole being. And when we enter these states, because we're so highly suggestible and we're so open, having, how we say one thing can throw somebody into an entirely different experience. And so an example of this from my own journey is having, when somebody has said, hey, sit down, I want to sing you a song. It's like, okay. That, like, how does that for me, how that landed was like, whatever you're offering, I don't know if I want that. It wasn't, it was how that was spoken immediately brought up all my defenses. And I said no, which, by the way, is important to have your yes and your no. So there's, hey, sit down, I want to sing you a song. And on the other hand, it's like, may I offer you a song? May I offer you a blessing? May I offer you a smudging? Those are two different worlds of practice. And so what we say and how we say it really matters. But before we can even get to that level of refinement, we need to each individually really understand how we are defining, how we relate to these core concepts. And for Darcy and I, we see these next core concepts and defined terms as so critical, it's worth devoting this entire module to. And so the first is an understanding of what is medicine. And within the core defined terms document this week, I really go into this. And so I invite you to dive into it, see what resonates for you, see what you feel unsure about, see what you're critical of, see what, stimulates your consciousness. But for Darcy and I, what we recognized is that a true medicine, a medicine is not just a substance. And in fact, medicine has kind of been co-opted. Not kind of, it's totally been co-opted. It's been co-opted by the pharmaceutical industrial complex. It's been co-opted by people selling new designer molecules that are actually highly addictive and fracture your psyche, but they're called medicine because they're psychoactive. People even called, have named different plants that have a high level of toxicity medicine. And while in truth, with a plant substance or even anything in our environment, the pharmacological benefit is always a range and a spectrum, and anything can be a medicine and anything can be a poison depending on dosage. What we mean, how we define medicine, is that a true medicine awakens the universal intelligence within to bring greater harmony, coherence, and beauty to the whole. I'll say that again. A true medicine awakens the universal intelligence within to bring greater harmony, coherence, and beauty to the whole. Anything less than this is a distortion. So this is how we relate to medicine. It took a while to do the inner thinking, feeling, vibing work to really be able to stand within this. And so a medicine then is not just a plant that we imbibe. A medicine can be so many things. And there's a lot that also is not medicine. And so it is our discernment and it is our recognition of the free will that lives within us to choose medicine by this definition, or to choose something else. And so a medicine being this level of benevolence, guidance, support, Gaian intelligence that awakens us, that awakens that universal intelligence, that inner healer. And then from that awakening of the inner healer, that harmony, coherence, and beauty is restored to the whole. So I can work with, a beloved plant medicine with one state of consciousness and receive no benefit. Nothing lasts, nothing sticks, because it's all about how I meet it. I could meet it with a whole different state of consciousness, which is what we are defining within the sacred space. And then that consciousness, that structured consciousness that we call sacred space, and these different conditions for sacred space, that married with the plant medicine have the potential to produce profound healing, lasting healing, embodied healing, where we're just not the same. Our bodies are transformed and elevated into their natural intelligence, which is always to move towards greater harmony, greater resilience, greater adaptability, and that beauty of the whole. So along with the essential condition of medicine, we cannot create or experience the sacred spaces where medicine and true healing can take place without these factors. Truth must be present. Body autonomy must be honored. Spiritual sovereignty must be held in absolute sanctity. And we have to have informed consent. So let me break this down a little bit more. My favorite teaching about truth, and I have quite a few because I am a lover of truth. It has been my main teacher, this love of truth, but my favorite teaching around it, the most helpful that I've found, is a medicine wheel teaching from a beautiful elder in our lives and community, Duncan Grady. He's half Scottish and half Sikh Blackfeet, who was raised traditionally for the first 12 years of his life before he was brought to residential boarding school and then brought into Vietnam. And he has an amazing story. His story is his, but he's one of the most profound healers and most experienced trauma therapists I've ever met. And this teaching was shared with us from him. And it goes, for something to be true, it needs to be true for everybody, everywhere, all of the time. So for something to be true, it needs to be true for everybody, everywhere, all of the time. And if it's not a paradox, it's probably not true. And so for the field of our ceremonial work, the field of our communion with the divine sacraments, the foundation needs to be held in truth. Now, on one level, truth is simple in that it's honest, it's clear. I say what I mean and I mean what I say. There's no lies or distortion. On another level, when we're going to this big truth, it's recognizing that what we bring into the space can be in alignment to what is true for everybody, everywhere, all of the time. Which, what we're striving to do in this course is to share the components, the aspects of sacred space that are at this level of truth. For everybody, everywhere, all of the time, in order for the inner healer to arise, to awaken, we need to be held in love, kindness, and compassion. Now, are there, of course, spontaneous times where that inner healer arises within the depths of the most horror and tragedy in our lives? Yes, absolutely. That is divine grace. That is a divine intervention of grace. We are in the practice of consistently creating the space where the inner healer can awaken. So we're working with the paradox of recognizing that divine interventions of grace do happen. So we can be in the hell realms and have healing awaken through us. But to become practitioners and to create spaces together for our practice with shamanism, with expanded states of consciousness, through breath work, through work with the entheogens, work with the master teacher plants. This needs to be a practice. So we consistently need to create a space where the overarching vibe is love, compassion, kindness, and unconditional positive regard. Now, second in that, but not less, but equal, is the truth that unless body autonomy is absolutely honored as sacred, no true healing can happen within a sacred space. So body autonomy is an inalienable right to have a yes and to have a no to what comes in, what touches, what surrounds your body. And I would extend that to your whole being. And this is kind of broken down in the last couple of years, informed consent, which is also an absolute necessity for sacred space. We kind of lost the thread of how absolutely vital informed consent is within the global pandemic, because we could not have informed consent and there was social pressure to choose a medical intervention that did not have safety records and trials. And there's big feelings on every side. And I stand in a place in Darcy, and I have created a space where we stand in a place of deep honor, absolute honor of everybody's right for body autonomy. And we can't truly reclaim the power of our yes and no without informed consent. So we can't have a space of true healing unless there's informed consent and absolute honor of body autonomy. Now, informed consent, of course, cannot happen with coercion, social pressure, or any other type of pressure to conform. Now, what that can look like in the plant spirit medicine worlds or the psychedelic worlds, it's kind of a lot like high school peer pressure, like a little, kind of a lot. Yeah, actually a lot, like a little, but a lot. Because if everybody's doing it, then it must be something good to do, right? Everybody in the circle is going with this, and the master shaman, they've said that it's a good thing to do. And in that, when we give away that power to groupthink or to the outside authority, then a whole series of power dynamics begin in the field that more often than not lead to disempowerment and an experience that is, even if it's positive, ultimately isn't aligned to that reclamation of our inner spiritual sovereignty and body autonomy. And we have so much relearning to do as a collective because we have been conditioned. And then all the previous generations were also conditioned to look outside ourselves for the truth, to look outside ourselves for the authority, to look outside ourselves for what to do next. And so as we're doing this repatterning, it's like, wait a second, I need to ask my body. I don't know how to ask my body. And there could be all this scrambling that happens really as we are defragging from this conditioned pattern of disempowerment. And so to reclaim our power is a learning process. And honestly, when I have been in this process, I needed to be with spiritually mature mentors and elders, which spiritual maturity is not so much about our ages. It's about how we relate to life. And as we're in a process of reclaiming our power, it's a very vulnerable process. And, in my own life, I really needed to be around the kindest, the gentlest, and truthful human beings. As I was in this awkward process of being like, I'm so used to always looking outside myself. And I just had these teachers that expected me to do that. And I've always looked outside of myself for reassurance. I don't know if I'm doing it right. I don't know if I'm doing it well. We can be in a really discombobulated and disoriented state as we're beginning this process. So choosing and vetting who we work with well is critical because we're going to be vulnerable as we're reclaiming. How do we have a yes and no? What does body autonomy even look like for me? And then as we move from that, we recognize that, that informed consent is essential because there's actually a lot of experimentation happening within the psychedelic therapy worlds and the plant spirit medicine worlds. There's a lot of people who don't have very much experience personally, who maybe have a limited or surface level understanding of the pharmacology and counterindications of plants or isolated molecules, designer molecules. And then there's this idea of the surface level understanding being enough, kind of like what's gained in a number of these different psychedelic training programs, or what you hear so often. It's like, oh, somebody went to Peru for 2 weeks, for 2 weeks and drank ayahuasca and has come back and considers themselves an ayahuasquero now. It's like this, like I can't even tell you how many times I've heard that story. Or, fill in the blank with any medicine. And so there's an epidemic. Oh, did I use that word? That's terrible. There's a big issue with people having very limited understanding, experimenting on others, charging a lot of money for it too, and then mixing these different molecules together and these different plants. And if we are not informed ourselves as practitioners, if we do not have a deep working understanding of the counterindications, and I would say with the plants, the generational wisdom of the lineages behind those counterindications that inform the dietas of different lineages and the different protocols, if we don't have a deeply informed understanding of an isolated designer molecule, how long it's been on the market, what the safety profile is of it, because there's a lot of experimental molecules that are there, that are out there that are being used, and they've been maybe around for like 5, 10, 20 years at the most. So there's a lot of experimentation. So how can we have informed consent if we don't even know what we're talking about, if we don't have the personal experience, if we haven't ourselves done trial and error and then worked with other people who they themselves are actually truly devoted to learning, because they recognize that by experimenting on ourselves or others, we're actually entering a very high stakes game where our health and our very sanity are at the table. And so I can't stress the importance of informed consent enough. We're so passionate about it that we developed the Resource and Empowerment Guide to Psychedelic Healing, which is a bonus to this awesome course. And we hope that you enjoy that you get some rich, rich information from it, and that it stimulates some more inner awareness around what you need to feel really held, and by a practitioner, by your community, and then also what you need to feel like the person that you're working with has properly informed you so that you can have a full yes or a no. And as our really good friend, one of our dearest sisters, Andrea Wilson always says, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. So we'll leave that for there. I'll leave that for now. Okay. So covering a lot here, and I'm kind of going rapid fire, so hope you're still with me. Thank you so much. So we have with truth, body autonomy, and informed consent. What is being reclaimed by so many of us right now? But really, this pandemic time has helped us to awaken to, which is the absolute necessity of awakening and remembering our spiritual sovereignty. Now, our spiritual sovereignty is built into the laws of the universe. It's built into the law of the universe, the game of life here. There's certain specific laws that life and the game of life for the human experience fall within. And our spiritual sovereignty is aligned to the law of free will. And the law of free will is actually one of the most powerful underlying tenets of the entire construct of this reality. You have the power of choice. Only you can choose for yourself what you welcome into your body and what you do not, who you welcome into your life and who you do not. As we wake up from the trance of generations of trauma that has created the foundation of incredible codependence across all levels of relationship, we awaken to how it is through reclaiming our personal responsibility within our free will that we heal. That actually, until we take 100% responsibility for our healing journey and for our lives as a whole, we're just going to flounder. We're not going to heal. And so our spiritual sovereignty is non-negotiable for the healing journey. And how I define spiritual sovereignty is actually through what I call the sovereignty paradox. And this is what I've learned through my healing journey. And I offer it to you because it's been hard won. This is not easy for me to find. It was not easy for me to do. It's a practice every day still. So spiritual sovereignty is the lived, awakened experience that I am in control of nothing, and yet I am responsible for everything in my life. I cannot control the weather or what anybody else does. And often I haven't been able to control what my body is doing. My body, it was doing what it was doing. So I'm not in control. I'm in control of nothing. But I have the ability to respond to everything. It's only at this juncture of my life where a very wonderful human being in the form of a young naturopath at this clinic who had been working with me over a number of years. He'd just gotten out of naturopathy school. I have a video where I share more of this story that I'll include in this course. And he shared with me that, in order to heal what I was healing, I needed to give it 100%. That I'd been trying, but I hadn't been giving it 100%. And that beautiful man who spoke truth to me in that moment changed my life. Because I realized he was right. I hadn't been giving my healing, my life 100%. I had been waiting for somebody else to do it for me. 7 years at that point of intense chronic illness. And I kept waiting for some doctor, some practitioner, some medication to do it for me. And I was failing over and over and over. And this moment looking back where I made this decision and I cried about it and I had big feelings about it, but I made this decision to take 100% responsibility. That I had the ability to respond 100% to everything in my life. Was it fair? No. Did I somehow karmically create it? I don't know. I didn't know then. I still don't know. I don't know why I had this illness, but the gifts from it as I began this process of choosing responsibility for every thought, every feeling, every experience, no longer being the victim to life on any level. And I guess that's what the gift of intense failure is just to recognize okay, this really doesn't work. And maybe I can just try a whole new way. And so I did. And little by little, even that was 3 years before I came to the plant medicines, little by little from that moment, I ended this downward trajectory that I'd been on, this slow spiral out, and began this little by little, baby step by baby step journey into radical health, really good, resilient, adaptable health, where there's like little ebbs and flows, but for like the last 18 years, it's just gotten better and better. And I work at it, I take all my supplements, I eat my living foods and my ancestral nutrient diet, and I move my body and I do all the things. And I do that because I know what it's like to suffer and be unwell, and feeling good is the best. So there's a little snippet from my life. So we have within these conditions of the sacred space, recognizing that unless I am willing to show up to the ceremony of life, the ceremony of the plant teachers, the ceremony of a breathwork session, unless you're willing to show up with 100% for your healing, it's not going to happen. And that's just the way it is. Nobody can do that work for us. And so that's why when we even pretend like we can do the work for somebody else, we're both diminished. We're both diminished. But paradoxically, again, healing is an inside job that we cannot do alone. Why? I'm not sure. So we have to take 100% responsibility. Only you and I can do that for ourselves. And yet, I can't do it on my own. I've needed to have just the kindest, most generous, most beautiful, really loving human beings that have met me step by step. I wouldn't be where I am in my healing and my path of service without having incredible support from other human beings. And so, as we're wrapping this module up in this session, I really invite you to consider each of these different components of sacred space. This paradigm, this worldview, this cosmovision of healing that we are offering to you. Because there's always places where it's just been fuzzy. We just haven't had full clarity. And I pray that this course can offer you more stimulation for your inner contemplations and the cultivation of your intrinsic awareness of what you really need, both in a sacred space and how you need to show up for that sacred space. What are your personal needs? What are your ethics? What are your boundaries? Only you can do this work for yourself. There are so many different ways that people are practicing with the sacred plant teachers and the designer molecules. And I see it a lot like Burning Man, which Darcy and I did meet at Burning Man now 18 or 19 years ago. I love Burning Man. My personality works great for Burning Man. I'm good with my yes, I'm good with my no. However, I see this a lot like Burning Man, the whole field, the whole third wave of the psychedelic renaissance. The lightest of the light are playing, the darkest of the dark are playing. There's a lot of different things happening in between. You get to choose where and how you play the game. Are you what you need, you can find. But getting that clarity ahead of time, really, really, really not just helpful, but essential to have a productive experience, to leave your ceremonial work more integral, so that you can be more integrated before you go back to your big life. You know, your children, your work, your family, your partnership, you know, your home, paying the bill, doing the laundry, all the things. And so you get to choose. So having this inner clarity and making sure, you know, doing your vetting work, which our resource and empowerment guide can really be a support for that. Knowing what you need in order to feel safe and to feel relaxed is essential. Like, I know for me, in order to feel like I can deeply welcome the big medicine of the entheogenic space, you know, recognizing I can't control what happens in that space, but that I have some essential needs for, you know, there's a certain level of sound. I'm a highly sensitive person. If there's too much sound or interference or loudness, my nervous system just can't relax. There's just certain things that I need. I need to be surrounded by people who, when I look in their eyes, there's genuine warmth. These are just simple things. But within our resource and empowerment model guide, there's so much more for you to consider. And just to close, the power of your yes and your no is so infinite. When we enter the entheogenic space, this becomes even more obvious. Really learning to differentiate between what we have a full-bodied yes for and what we have a no for is essential. Being in an environment, in the sacred space, in the field, in the community, where body autonomy, informed consent, honor of the sacred and inalienable rights of spiritual sovereignty and your free will sidestep a lot of the BS. Just by looking for that, you'll be able to really find more aligned practitioners. And then if you're in a process of becoming or being in service in these ways, you can start to have a reflective process and really check those things. You know, there's what I've noticed in my own journey is there's subtler and subtler and subtler nuances to informed consent and body autonomy and spiritual sovereignty. And that's a beautiful teaching to see that there's always room for me to refine and to land this. Because if we're not in honor of that, then trespass can happen. And trespass is when we intentionally, and then there's unintentional, which is not as big of a deal, but it still happens. But there's trespass. And when we trespass against another's free will, that has profound consequences within our own lives and within the energetic field of creation. We want to do everything we possibly can to never trespass upon another, to never violate another person's body autonomy, spiritual sovereignty, their yes and their no and free will. And so with all of that, there's some beautiful deepening practices for this module and this week. And I really invite you, even though there's a little bit of, you know, energy and fire behind this, I really invite you to bring this level of teachings into your heart, to bring it to the altar of your heart. And remember that we fully encourage you to take what works for you and leave what doesn't. From anything I'm sharing or Darcy shares in this journey, that your free will is so profound we're really happy if you choose to not pick this up or you choose to pick it up. We have non-attachment around that. And to remember that even if in the past you have consented to something, you can always revoke your consent. It's totally possible. Like I said yes, now I say no. I revoke my consent. That no longer works for me. I had a different level of understanding then, and I've grown and I've evolved and I've changed, and now I have a new understanding, and I revoke my consent. Because within the worlds of shamanism and spirit and power, our free will is our power, our choice, where we choose to have a yes, where we choose to place our conscious awareness is what we feed, it's what we grow, is what we empower in our lives. And that is only ever amplified by the sacred plant teachers and psychedelics. It's only ever amplified. And so having this clarity ahead of time is radically beneficial. So I pray that there may be benefit for you in receiving these teachings. Please share any reflections or questions or comments that you might have in our group chat. Thank you so much for being on this journey with Darcy and I. With much love and many blessings, Ayu Masi Kanapa, we are all one family. All my relations.